Right?
He does. He's like working with Zeppelin. He's working with Pink Floyd. It's got, but I guess my thing that I was going to get to is at what point the album is mixed to a point and the band doesn't like it. Like you said, it sits for a bit. At what point do the Beatles then decide, why don't we give it
Klein?
When Abco decided
to give it to Phil Spector.
Look, I got Rich is back here. The band's about to break up. I can't. Let's not think about how much in this. Okay, this is going to make
Spector sounds good to me.
This is going to make my point right here.
Yeah.
If Let It Be came out in 1971 instead of early 1970, it would have been a Scraps, B-sides and ephemera LP instead of the Beatles' last album. And I think it still is Scraps and ephemera.
But it's marketed that way for a reason.
It literally, but it came out. It was the soundtrack to the movie and whatever. To me, it is. Yeah. There's so many excuses for that record to exist, except for the fact that, hey, this is a good record we want to put out.
Right.
So
it's the soundtrack to the movie. We had to put out a soundtrack. Oh, they were going to break up anyway, and so we, Phil Spector worked magic on it. It's like, well, then.
But the fact that like a busk like Maggie May is on it is like. That shows you what I mean? Like, and it I'm sure it was their stab at being like, we're just going to throw that on there, but at the same time, they needed as much filler as they could get in there too. Like,
is it astonishing? I mean, they probably recorded during those sessions, probably 100 different songs and so many takes of so many songs, and they still got a less than 40-minute album that still had Chatter on it and Maggie May.
And like a song like I Got a Feeling is like Paul has got this I got a feeling, and John's got this everybody's got a hard year. Everybody let that and they just were like, okay, throw that together, and okay, that's a song, it's brilliant.
But I see, that to me, it really, while they have absolutely nothing to do with each other, to me, that's like my favorite, because it's like, it's actually, it is the B-side of Abbey Road in that I
don't hate it, but I think that it's more Phil Spector than it is like the Beatles. You know what I mean? Like they do it, but it's they do it on the rooftop too, right? Like they do it as they do I Got a Feeling on the rooftop. They do it. So. You know what? I think they do.
I don't. Yeah. You know what? I think
they do. Yeah. There's no doubt in my mind. And I'm wrong about it because I was thinking it had more to do with the studio. And actually, it's a fleshed out song.
There was not that much manipulation where he edited two songs together to make them one song. Like I know he did like
the Beatles did it for him. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see that in the movie in the where they do that. I mean, that's the thing. It's it's great. It's exciting to see the footage of John and Paul harmonizing on Two of Us. Like it's like there's that there's still the Beatles singing.
Yep.
It's
there's always that.
And it is, that's what's kind of funny, because how they're not getting along, and John thinks Paul's greatest song is Why Don't We Do It in the Road, but then the two of them do their harmonies again, and it's almost that, to a certain extent, the Get Back part of that, it almost feels like probably what that the two of them trying to write songs together in 1960 or 59 was like.
Let's go back to that for a second. That song, Why Don't We Do It in the Road, comes out on the White Album, and it's a song that I read that about, John Lennon had mentioned that a long time ago. I read that, and I took that as John putting a slight on Paul. It's just oh yeah, it's my favorite song that Paul wrote, and because it sounds like something John would say. But I will say that thanks to Far Out magazine or whatever, things like that, there's been things they've they've taken that as more of a, like, you know,
John's favorite
John
Paul
said
McCartney
that
album.
he did the avant-garde flippant kind of stuff, and that Paul was copying his style, and that he was more upset that he actually really wasn't on the track, rather than him. Like, you've heard that, right? So you read that same.
What Paul was off doing, you know, we were all off doing our own tracks because we needed to finish the White Album when we had a deadline. It had to be out before Christmas. So we're all off in separate studios. And Paul does, why don't we do it on the road? That's the one I want it to be on. You know, like that's how I heard the story. Like, you know.
But
Paul,
when you first heard it, didn't you hear it as more of him like, yeah, that's my favorite Paul McCartney song? Because it is like a, you know, like it's as bare bones as can possibly be.
There is the dissonance. There is the dissonance in my brain of like, I don't enjoy that song.
Right. Like that's what Paul McCartney's good at, you know, like, right. You know?
Yeah.
And wait till Maxwell Silver Hammer comes next.
Oblada. Yeah.
You're not going to, right. Obladi, right. On this very record, you're going to hear Obladi, Oblada.
Yeah.
Which isn't, I mean, it is what it is. I can never believe that there's that much vitriol for it from the other guys. You know what I mean? Like, I get it. It's hokey and stuff like that, but like, it's such a catchy pop song that I get that it would be a TV theme show, you know, like their opening.
But you know the story, and the takes are there on the White Album box set and stuff, where it's done slower and more skosh, and
right.
You know, and they keep doing take after take, and apparently the story goes, John's just like, fuck it, and he does it double time, and he's playing the piano on it, and that's the take. Like, it was like,
I think you're right. I think you're right.
You know, and he's just
that's the take. Right?
Yes, and it's like twice.
Right, like I am done. You know, right.
In that McCartney 321 series, McCartney explains that a lot of times what they did was, if it was a fast part, they did it slower and then sped the tape up. And he explains in one of George Harrison's leads, he's like, oh yeah, he didn't play that in real time. We went down an octave, slowed it down, recorded it, and then sped it up to speed. So I'm wondering, maybe that is what they were doing with that song at some point.
No. I think you're confusing some of the more sort of psychedelic stuff, or the fat, like this. I think the White Album is more to the. It's less of that, you know,
more organic than,
you know.
Yeah, but these weren't, when he's mentioning this stuff, he's not talking about psychedelic stuff. He's talking about, oh gosh, I can't get it off the top of my head.
I'm trying to think of like what would stick out in my head is something like, it's funny, like I've heard him play the solo for Hard Day's Night live so many times. It's really, whenever it comes to the solo and they're playing that song live, I always kind of cringe a little bit and hope that George, it's like, is John going to hit the note on This Boy tonight? You know, like you're watching some, you know, YouTube thing and it's just like live in Australia and it's, you know, This Boy. You're like, is John hit the note on this one? Yeah. And then like, you know, then you hear like a song like, you know, Hard Day's Night, and like George's solos are always really not great. And I think a lot of it is like George Martin, I think, double times his solo with like a harpsichord, or he's playing something, you know. I mean, his like even songs like In My Life, you know, I think that he plays
a harpsichord,
like a piano forte or something like that he plays, and then speeds it up and it sounds like a harpsichord. And like it, but like I think he plays it in halftime and then speeds it up so then it has that whole it's got that. Well, it's what, Baroque, I guess, right? It wasn't, John? Is that what it's going for there?
Yes.
You know, McCartney's thing was that, you know, like Rick Rubin was kind of surprised, and he's like, well, you know, to play it perfectly and clean. So it's not like you could imagine that it wasn't beyond his abilities. It's like, you know, when you're playing, you want to, and especially recording, you want it to have it as perfect as possible. So they slowed it down. They slowed the tempo down to hit it exactly, and then sped the tape up, which would explain, like, when you see live versions of stuff, he can do it. He's just he's doing it live, so at that speed, it's it's not going to sound as perfect and as good as he recorded it slower. And it wasn't anything like it was like repetitive triplets or something, like something that I listened to that thousands, I'm sure with you guys, if I pointed out, you'd be like, really, that lead, like it's not anything like
yeah, but the Obla story, like that, I mean, that's just the story that's told. So I don't think there's trickery on Obla, but I mean,
he did mention
Obla that the guys don't like it more because they had to play it 1,000 times rather than this is the most wretched song of all time, which would still be Maxwell Silverhammer.
It's true. Well, at the time they hadn't gotten there yet. They didn't know what the future had, because the story, right. But because I mean, John would say it's like this. We should give this song to another artist on Apple. Why are we doing it? But
he wouldn't have called that one granny music, and he called everything that Paul had done granny music from pretty early on. Like he started using that term for him, like he puts out that granny music. And Obla, I don't know that fits the bill for that.
No, I don't think so. But I think, it's all together now. It's a kid's song.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like a song like "Hello Goodbye." It's funny. Like I went and saw Paul McCartney play the one and only time I saw him play. He opened with "Hello Goodbye," and it was great. It really was. Like it has a you say yes, it's like. But it's like it says everything it's going to say in the first 10 seconds of the song, and it's thrilling. And yet it's like, but then all of a sudden it's just like, I say hi, you say like it's the kind of song that writes itself. And it would have made John Lennon at that point cringe, just like, really? Yes, no, high, low, like, really?
Yeah.
You're going there? Okay,
It's elementary.
Well, it's just a pop song, and it works because it is just a catchy pop song. But boy, like it's like another song that like another band could have easily covered that one, and like because it was so lightweight and such a confection.
Well, to on the other side of that, in the Rick Rubin interview, Paul talks about John coming with "Come Together," and that "Come Together" is, even when he brings it in, is at the pace of Chuck Berry's "You Can't Catch Me." Like it's the same words and the same.
Oh wow!
And Paul says, like, he's like, no, let's look, we got to do this different. Let's slow it down, and we slow it down. And then he comes in with the sliding bass line. So
bass line makes the song. There's no denying, and like the whole band gets swampy because of that bass, and that's that's the bottom line right there. And it's great, and it's really great, and he takes them to that place. Like, so it's Paul McCartney.
But I'm saying that's even at that late stage, like because at the end of the day, it's like John and Paul did some great things afterwards, but at the end of the day, it's like they really kind of needed each other, like one shining it and the other person roughing it up. You know what I mean? It really was it ran its course, obviously, but they learned together, and they both held on to their essence, and they pulled it back forth. And when they stopped working together, that's when the friction started. It was harder to compromise. It
was right. It became spotty. That's all. Like Lennon clearly and McCartney clearly put out great songs, like without each other being, around, but never with the same, there's not a Paul McCartney record, the closest you get would be like, it's immediate. It's a Plastic Ono Band. That's a pretty perfect record, like I have no, it's completely different. Like, there's no denying that, but it's a John Lennon record, and it's great, like it all the way through. But I can't say that about
any other
any other record, right? Yeah. Yep.
So.
Interesting. Yeah.
Including anything by Paul McCartney.
Which arguably is the Plastic Ono record like what John was not doing with the Beatles? You know what I mean? It was kind of, because this, you can't like Instant Karma is spectacular. That wasn't.
It is. But that's so early in the game, it's hard to separate it from the Beatles. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's but it just is.
And certainly the first McCartney album, like, you know, Maybe I'm Amazed, like that. There's someone had put together what would have been the Beatles' next album, and they picked